Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Reed Berglund of iSnap. Reed, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what was your background before joining iSnap?
It's been a little over 10 years in the startup space, all in marketing technology. We had a previous company, which was an influencer marketplace called Full Bottle, which we were using a reverse auction technique to now find liquidity between creators on Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube who were selling video and photo content, and then matching them with brands who were looking to now augment the production of high quality photo and video content. And then prior to that, I'd been in free-to-play gaming, a company called MiniClip. We were one of the first players to first launch free-to-play Flash-based games on the web, and then utilize that as our primary acquisition tool as we move to iOS and Android. So it's been a fun and exciting 10 years in the digital marketing and technology space.
Well, that's great. So what led you to start work at iSnap? What led to this idea?
Two things actually that gave us insight into the first party data market of digital marketing from our previous company. Much of what we were doing with the previous company was built around the social APIs of Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. And we were starting to see how the platforms were limiting access from third parties, particularly from the data that was being collected from the platforms. And this was right at the same time as GDPR, which is known as the General Data Regulation Protection, had now been drafted and put into place in the EU. And effectively, that was legislation that was protecting the privacy and data associated with citizens of the EU. It was drafted in 2016 and then implemented in 2018. And it immediately changed how brands were now addressing their tech stack, where they were getting data from, and placing a great emphasis on what is known as declared data. And effectively now formalizing a strategy that allows them to go direct to their customer, to have their customer opt in and declare certain data points about themselves that they would share with the brand. And immediately we said, there's going to be a big rush in this direction as more and more legislation now moves into the United States. Now on a state level, you're seeing that. So those are the two main insights that we were seeing, the platforms now reducing some of the access to data and usage of the platform, and then legislation coming into place.
For our investors out there, what would you advise them to consider before they invest in the digital SaaS space?
Well, one is from a legislation perspective, looking at the companies and how they are now managing data is, I think, mission critical. If the company doesn't have a firm grasp on just how to obviously protect their use of data, how they're acquiring the data, those are going to be the two biggest things. I think the second thing is then understanding now what aspect of the supply chain within digital marketing that they are actually addressing. I think it's very difficult sometimes to see, because there's so many layers within digital marketing, that it can be challenging to see what possibly the differentiation points are, and data being the one critical thing within that.
So how is the digital SaaS industry evolving? Where is it going these days?
Well, it's a great question. I think now, because so many tools have been built that really allow small teams to function at a high level of productivity with great intelligence, because of AI, because of automation, you're seeing more and more brands now bring a lot of capabilities in-house that they used to outsource to agencies, vendors, etc. So you'll see more intelligence that's brought in primarily in the form of, again, customer data platform, where brands are looking to build their tech stack, typically picking one of the large Salesforce, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft as a key foundational block, but then now more and more expanding on those blocks with things like a customer data platform, content being a huge component of this that's being brought in-house, because you have more and more of the capabilities that are effectively able to be run by a smaller team internally. That's probably the big change that's evolving. And the second is brands reducing their dependency on the platforms. I think they've now realized over the last 10 years, whether it's Facebook or it's Yelp or it's TripAdvisor, that there was an overwhelming dependency that was created on those platforms. They were told time and time again that they needed to have a pretty strong position on those platforms, real estate such as Facebook business pages. And then Facebook actually changed now how they would optimize those business pages, and they effectively became irrelevant because they weren't now appearing as prioritized in the algorithm. So you're seeing much more of a move away from the platforms to de-risk the dependency that they had on them.
So what is the growth rate of this sector and how big is it going to get?
Well, that's the amazing thing. It has been growing dramatically over the last 10 years. The exciting thing is, as I just mentioned, because you have now more and more things that are being automated, more and more intelligence, primarily in the form of machine learning and AI that are coming into the space, you continue to see real growth. I believe now you're looking at a compound annualized growth rate of about a little over 15%. When you look at the market, just digital marketing software in 2018, $100 billion and continuing to grow. And then you look within our specific segment, customer marketing software, data platforms, that's about $15 billion of that $100 billion. And that alone is growing at a 18% annualized growth rate.
Wow. Big and growing fast. So let's talk about the challenges in this sector. What are the challenges with regards to regulatory or the technical or the market?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is the size of the players. As you start with the platforms, there's already been talk this year because it's you're moving into an election year of antitrust and whether you break up the platforms or not because they've become so strong. I think Amazon being one of the biggest players from a digital marketing perspective and how quickly they've grown has been pretty eye-opening. And their size kills. So the startups have to move fast. I think they have to be well-funded to really make an impact. On the other side, you have real big players on the SaaS side. So Salesforce being the biggest, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft has done an incredible job of now building out their cloud platform. And that's one of the big trends that you've been seeing is all of those big boys have now moved to what's called a digital experience platform, all cloud-based, and they're competing. So as a startup, you have to really know your swim lane, where you're going to fit, because it's likely that one of those five are going to acquire you if you don't already have a path to the public markets.
So how does iSnap fit into the overall landscape? Where do you position yourself?
Well, we position ourselves, as I mentioned earlier, as customer data platform. Our method for acquiring the data is through a content experience that the brand can now have directly with the customer when they're on site, on a property, on a ship, Region cruise ships. So we would really fall into the content and data stack of these platforms. Those that are looking to create now competency for mainly video content, and those that really haven't rounded off now their declared data strategies.
Well, that's great. And so what direction are you taking it? Where will it go and evolve to?
We've started primarily in the travel and hospitality, and because the application of the platform is really strong there. So we began in 2018 with Norwegian Cruise Lines as our first major enterprise customer. And we went through an alpha, a beta, and an MVP with their direct feedback, which was a pretty unique position to be in. And as a result, we then really continued to validate both our hypothesis and then the product that we built around that within travel and hospitality as a result of that. Since then, we've expanded to media and entertainment, primarily in addressing now the challenge of collecting content and first-party data at events. So companies like Live Nation and iHeart, who are hosting thousands of events around the country in local markets, some that are very large concerts, it's very challenging to now get access to a lot of the content that's being created during those events. So we're looking to come in and now make that a very seamless process, within the byproduct being the first party data that's collected from the customers.
What would you consider your most unique value proposition, or if you want to look at it from the outside, competitive advantage? What's unique about your product over the others?
Well, I think the mere fact that we are collecting declared data from the customer is the first and foremost unique advantage that we have. The process for how we collect it, which is bringing customers into effectively creating video content while they share the data with us, also unique. No one else in the industry is doing that. And then lastly, I would say the actual controls that we put in the hands of the brand to create their very owned and operated Snapchat-like experience with customers is unique. No one else is doing that in the industry.
Well, that's great. Sound like you have a great thing going there, and looking forward to seeing how it progresses. In the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think you can never really cover enough the legislation piece. California today is leading the way, which isn't really a surprise. They've been out on the forefront in terms of privacy issues for a while, but I think you're going to see now more and more states adopt the variations or an iteration of the policies that now California puts on the books, and you'll see a dramatic change in how the platforms now interact with customers. I think you're also going to see a rise in a real reimagining of what social networking means. And a lot of it will be predicated more around privacy and how you protect and encrypt conversations, because consumers are becoming more aware of now the value of their data and how that data is being used. And I think as a part of becoming more aware, they're more aware of the value exchange when they sign up for a platform. So I think that will be one of the big changes that we see over the next 5 years.
That'd be a very interesting 5 years to see how it progresses, but it sounds like you're in the middle of it there with a great view of it. And appreciate your taking time to talk today. How best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Email is great. We love educating and also being educated from those that are fighting the fight with us in this industry. Read at iSnap.com is the best way to reach me. That's Reed, REED at ISNAP.com.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes, and appreciate your taking time and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thanks very much. I'll appreciate it.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.